The Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is the retro gaming handheld I have been waiting for the past 2 years. Let me tell you why. I've had the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro for well over a month, and by now I would have usually done a review of a handheld like this, but there's a really good reason why I've waited so long to do my Retroid Pocket 4 Pro review. And that is because I wanted to make sure 100% that it was as good as I initially thought it was. The Retroid Pocket 3 Plus was one of my favourite retro handhelds of last year, but as I started to use it so much, there were a few issues that started to pop up. For one, the feeling of it in my hand wasn't perfect for some of the more high-end, fast-paced first-person shooters that I was playing. And second of all, it did develop a fault with the R1 button. The button still worked, but it didn't have that clickiness that you expect. There was something wrong with the clicker, and even when I opened it up, I couldn't fix it. So I wanted to make absolutely certain that none of these issues came up with Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and that it maintained its awesome first impressions on me over the course of a month. So over the past 30 days and more, I've been using the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro for PlayStation 2 gaming, Gamecube gaming, game streaming, playing some Fortnite with the kids, some Minecraft, and everything in between. And I can honestly say the Retroid Pocket 4 has not missed a beat. Starting off, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro looks pretty similar to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, with the exception of home buttons, start and select buttons being on the face, and some changes around the sides. Other than that, the most noticeable change for me beyond a minor aesthetic was that the face buttons are slightly larger than they were on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. And this was one of the things that always bothered me about the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. The face buttons just felt a little bit too small considering the size of the console. I felt they could have been closer to the normal size we get on controllers. And the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro fixes that issue. It gives you good sized face buttons that makes them completely comfortable to use. But although the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro has many visual similarities to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, the second you get it in your hands, it feels entirely different. It feels like a much more solid console. It feels much more well built and chunkier in your hands, although it doesn't take up any more real estate in your pocket. I think Retroid have really done a great job of stepping up their premium quality feel over the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus and giving users the experience they would expect at the $200 mark. As we said, the face buttons feel different and are slightly bigger, but on top of that, the thumbsticks are completely different in their feel. They have a more indented feel now in the sticks, and the feeling of the sticks themselves feel a lot more smoother and tighter to use than the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. The Retroid Pocket 3 Plus analog sticks were great, but they did feel like portable analog sticks, like they were a little bit smaller and something was slightly missing. On the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, they feel as good as they do on a normal controller, giving you that perfect amount of fidelity that you need, especially when playing racing games, and giving a real nice quality smooth movement throughout that just makes them so much more pleasurable to use. On top of that, the shoulder buttons are a huge improvement. The R1 and R2 just feel better and a bit more solid, and don't feel like they'll suffer from issues of losing that clickiness. And the L2 and R2 finally give us that analog control that we've needed so much. And it's not just analog functionality that's thrown in there, there's a good amount of range when pressing down R2 and L2, which is exactly what you need, once again, when playing racing games or trying to get that subtle precision feeling that you need from analog triggers. One thing that is missing from the RP4 Pro that I thought Retroid might have brought forward from the Flip are those extra functional buttons that they had on the back. The Retroid Pocket 4 Pro just has the standard buttons you'd expect on a modern gaming controller. But in all honesty, on the Retroid Pocket Flip, I never really use those anyway, but it could be handy to have them considering the range of gaming that the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro offers. Another huge difference that I noticed as soon as I started using the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro was how much better the screen is. The screen is so much more vibrant and full of colour than the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus was. And I wasn't expecting such a big change because I never saw the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus screen and I thought that it wasn't good. I always thought it was great. But the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is just night and day. It instantly feels better and is so much more of an enjoyable experience when playing any game on it. But as we said, beyond that, form factor wise, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro continues the aspects of the Retroid Pocket 3 with the widescreen display, the stacked shoulder buttons, and the same overall curved rectangle feel. A design that I think works really well, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, in terms of retro handhelds, Retroid always seem to position themselves pretty well. They always seem to release a console console at the right time, not too soon, not creating some non-existent gap in the market just to release another console. They always seem to find a good spot to fill that's needed. And I think the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro does that perfectly. At $200, I think the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro for me sits in the mid-range. You can get some retro gaming handheld consoles that are a lot more expensive and can absolutely crank out technically a lot more power, or you can go for the budget range, which is a lot cheaper, but doesn't get anywhere near the emulation capabilities of the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. But what I think Retroid have done is sit in that place perfectly, because although they are in the middle tier, they achieve the kind of emulation we would expect from a lot of high-end devices. For me, near perfect PlayStation 2 and Gamecube emulation has always been the dream for a retro gaming handheld. And anything we can get above and beyond that is amazing, and we can look at that to the next generations of these consoles. But as we all know, last year, we were always kind of just off that mark, with the closest consoles getting there were consoles of the likes of the Odin Pro, which still had their issues and it still wasn't perfect emulation. And in 2023, the cost of those consoles was quite expensive. The Retroid Pocket 3 Plus and some of the Ambenic devices did touch on the edges of PlayStation 2 and Gamecube emulation, but there were always noticeable issues, so there was a lot of tinkering needed to get the most out of the system. Whereas the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro lets you get this console at $200 and gives you stunning Gamecube emulation and amazing PlayStation 2 emulation with hardly any effort. And on top of that, it ticks the boxes of premium quality feel and portability that you want in a retro gaming handheld. All of the options always kind of missed in some area. If it was great for portability, it didn't always necessarily match the emulation that you wanted, or if it matched the emulation that you wanted, it wasn't always as portable as you wanted. But the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro sits in that sweet spot and ticks all of those boxes. And I can confidently say that the practicality of the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is one of its strong points, because as I've said, I've used it for the past month pretty much every single day and not had any issues of where I've taken it or how I've used it. It's sat in my pocket no problem. It is such a durable, great and pocket friendly console, and when you consider the power that it packs, the game library that it has access to is pretty phenomenal. Now in terms of a UI and ease of use, I put the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro somewhere in the middle range. It's not the easiest console to just pick up and play for somebody who isn't tech savvy, because it uses Android and you have to set up your emulators on there, make sure you've got the right BIOSes, etc., and potentially play around with some settings. As opposed to some of the more budget friendly Linux options, it's not strictly pick up and play. But for anybody that's familiar with the use of Android or mobile phones, or is comfortable with navigating around a file system or installing an app, there should be absolutely no problem whatsoever. And although I say I put it in the mid-range, I have to compare it somehow to these consoles that you can just switch on and select the game straight away. It is the next best thing to that in terms of user experience and how easy it is to use. But now let's talk about the emulation, because for me, that was the big thing about this console. All the extras in terms of how good it feels, the premium quality, the better screen, the analog inputs, those were all awesome extras that I wasn't even expecting. It was the emulation that I was looking forward to for PlayStation 2 and Gamecube, and I can happily say I have not been disappointed. First off, with Gamecube emulation, it absolutely smashes pretty much every single game I've tried on it. Now, I have done a video covering 20 plus games that I've tried on the system, and I have to say I was pretty conservative in how I played those games, running it at 0.7 resolution and not putting the system on high performance, just running it at standard mode, and played pretty much all of those games no issues whatsoever. And behind the scenes, cranking the system up to higher resolutions and using high performance mode, it absolutely smashes it. Gamecube emulation really is a dream, and the video that I did doesn't even do it justice for how well it handles Gamecube. And the same can be said for PlayStation 2. With the PlayStation 2 video I did as well, covering 20 plus games, there are about 3 or 4 games that I did struggle to get maximum performance out of, but that video performed strictly using standard performance mode. I didn't crank it up to high performance, and any of the adjustments or changes that I did in the settings of the emulators were pretty minimal, to be honest. And I always do that because I want people who just come in and don't really know any of this stuff to just be able to be comfortable to be able to pick up a console, maybe install some ROMs and start playing. And if a console can do that with minimal effort and minimal changes, then I think that's a really great starting point. But I also have a follow-up video where some of the games that it did struggle with on the PlayStation 2, I cranked up the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro to performance mode and played around with some settings and got absolutely brilliant results. Honestly, of all the games I've tried to emulate, there's only really two that have given me a problem. That's Need for Speed Underground 2 and Time Splitters 2. Need for Speed Underground 2 is always a bit of a pain, and it was a pain for the PlayStation 2 on native hardware. And Time Splitters 2 is a bit of an odd one to try and emulate, because I've had that running great on lower end devices and not so great on higher end devices, so that's a bit of a curveball anyway. But beyond that, all PlayStation 2 games I've tried to play, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro has smashed them. And this just opens up the options for even further emulation as well. Systems beyond the PlayStation 2 and the Gamecube, which I will talk about with you guys more the more I start to delve and understand how powerful the system really is. Now in terms of specs, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro is well packed out, and I will show up a screenshot now of what those specs are, and you can go over to the Chronic Spartan Gaming website and compare the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro to a lot of its competition. But in all honesty, the main competitors for the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro now are consoles like the Odin Pro, the Odin 2, the Retroid Pocket 4, the smaller brother of the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and the new Anbernic RG556. Now we will have comparison videos for the Retroid Pocket 4 versus Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, and also against the RG556 as well. And if you want to see how it compares to the Odin Pro, videos are already up for that. But one thing I can definitely say, regardless of any comparisons, is that standalone, anyone who gets this console in their hand is not going to be disappointed. This is probably, for me, the first retro gaming handheld I've gotten that has ticked every box. We always say there's something missing, there's something not quite right. They get something right in one console and then they miss the same thing in the next console. Why can't they just keep on improving? For me personally, over the past month, there's been nothing I've found that I don't like about the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. And if anything does come up in the future, I will definitely let you guys know that. If you do want to get a clear review of just how awesome this system is for GameCube and PlayStation 2 emulation, check out this video right here.